Extremism online təşəbbüsü ifadə azadlığı sahəsində çalışan bir neçə deməli təşkilatın konsortiumudur. Bunlar arasında deməli reportyorların azadlığı və təhlükəsizliyi və insan hüquqları mərkəzi və Azərbaycan media mərkəzidir.
I applaud them to have seized the opportunity the IGF in Baku offers to include human rights of the internet governance on the international and domestic agenda.
Doğrudan da onlar alqışlanmalıdır ki, onlar deməli IGF-in deməli təqdimatına, gündəliyinə bu məsələni internet idarə edilməsi və insan hüquqları məsələsini daxil ediblər.
I would also like to pass the message from a dear colleague of mine, Frank La Rue, who was planned to speak today together with me, but unfortunately he could not join us here at IGF.
Və mən həmçində çox yaxın dostumuz Frank La Rue'nun salamlarını sizə çatdırıram. O da bugün bizimlə burada iştirak etməli idi, çıxış etməli idi, amma çox təəssüflər olsun ki, o gələ bilmədi. Onun salamlarını sizə çatdırıram.
That's why I will also touch upon several issues that are related to the UN documents, recent documents in relation to human rights and internet freedom.
Ümumiyyətlə, mənim çıxışımda bu yaxınlarda BMT-nin qəbul etdiyi internet azadlığı və insan hüquqları bağlı bəzi məsələlərə, deməli, qəbul edilmiş sənədlərlə bağlı danışacağım.
From the beginning of the UN Internet Governance Forum, it was always clear that internet governance should not only address the technical administration of this network of networks. Already in its June 2005 definition, the Working Group on Internet Governance stated, and I would like to quote here, but I know, again, I repeat, this is taking enormous amount of time to express everything I would like to say today here. But I will try to do it as briefly as possible, to bother you with too many details and very long speech.
Və burada əlbəttə ki, BMT-nin internet idarəçiliyi üzrə texniki administrasiyasının 2005-ci ildə qəbul etdiyi bu cür bəzi deməli materialları barədə qeyd etmək istərdim. Əlbəttə ki, düzdür, çalışacağım ki, mümkün qədər qısa danışım, çünki burada bir çox detallar var ki, yəqin ki, vaxtımız çox gedər bu barədə danışsaq.
Internet governance is the development and application by governments, the private sector and civil society.
İnternet idarə etməsi, deməli, həm vətəndaş cəmiyyəti, həm də ki, özəl sektorun deməli, həyatına çox mühüm rol oynayan bir vasitədir.
In their respective roles of shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures.
Verdikləri qərarda, onların tətbiq etdiyi qaydalarda çox
and programs that shape the evolution and use of the internet.
Və internetin idarə edilməsi məsələsində də düzdür, internetin idarə edilməsi məsələsində də bu cür xeyli sayda proqramlar həyata keçirilir.
So what I'm trying to stress here is that the definition clarifies that the civil society is an integral part of the internet governance.
Qeyd olunmalıdır ki, vətəndaş cəmiyyəti internet idarəçinin çox vacib ayrılmaz bir hissəsidir.
As it is proven here today, but also at so many other events around the world.
Digər ümumiyyətlə tədbirlərdə də bu artıq öz sübutunu tapmışdır.
And it at least indirectly mentions human rights when it speaks of shared principles, norms and rules.
Prinsiplər və normal prinsiplər barədə danışanda da ən azından bunu vurğulamaq yerinə düşər.
You are all very much aware on July 6, 2012 United Nations Human Rights Council resolution on the promotion, protection and enjoyment of human rights on the internet, stressed the importance of the internet for human rights and vice versa.
İnsan hüquqları sahəsində daha da vacib rol oynaması üçün qəbul etdiyi qətnamədən yəqin ki, xəbəriniz var.
So no matter how certain governments interpret these resolutions, it is very clear to all of us that human rights and internet should come hand in hand. I would also here mention the issue of security and human rights in general, including freedom of expression and free flow of information. On many occasions, I'm told that certain measures by certain governments to restrict and to block and to filter
qadağan etmək üçün, deməli, qarşısını almaq üçün və yaxud da filtrdən keçirmək üçün
are done in order to protect the societies.
və belə deyirlər ki, bu tədbirlər cəmiyyətləri qorumaq məqsədilə həyata keçirilir.
I'm hearing it's done because of national security issues.
Və hətta deyirlər ki, milli təhlükəsizlik nöqteyi nəzərindən bu tədbirlər görülür.
I hear it's done because of terrorism
Deyirlər
threat,
ki, terrorizm təhlükəsi olduğundan bu tədbirlər görülür.
child abuse,
Uşaqlara qarşı zorakılıq,
extremism,
ekstremizm,
hate speech,
nifrət dolu deməli nitqlər.
and all of these that I mentioned are legitimate threats.
Və əlbəttə bu
For our
hamısı
society.
bizim cəmiyyət üçün deyərdim ki, qanuni təhlükələrdir bu.
Legitimate for any government
hər bir
to fight
üçün
this threat.
legitim olmalıdır bu təhlükələrin oradan qaldırılması üçün.
And in no way my office or me personally are trying to say that this is not legitimate right of any government to do so, to protect us from the threats that are very visible online but also offline in our ordinary life.
Online görünən təhlükələrdən bizi qorumaq istəyən legitim hüququ deyil.
But unfortunately, in my experience in the past 3 years, in most of the cases, this is not really done in order to protect us from evil. It is done in order to restrict or to stop critical, deferring voices in our society. Voices that are sometimes very provocative. Voices that are sometimes talking about issues that we find irritating or do not like. Also voices that are challenging the powerful, the governments. But the answer should never be imprisoning, arresting, beating, intimidating and threatening these people, no matter how much we do not like. I would go one step further. The internet today is not a virtual space or merely the digital world, as opposed to the real world anymore. But it is an integral part of our everyday life and touches upon all dimensions of this life. Private, public, business, education, you just name it. But of course also human rights expand to the internet. We cannot avoid it. Sometimes I hear do not touch it, it's just technical issue. It's nothing to do with human rights. Of course I disagree with this. They have also, all these issues become part of our online activities. And in my view, online and offline is not dividable in the 21st century. But that is why in 21st century we should also not arrest and intimidate people for expressing their views online. Not to mention offline. The resolution that I mentioned previously also goes further in this direction. And it says that the same rights that people have offline must also be protected online. In particular, freedom of expression is applicable regardless of frontiers through any media of any choice. The resolution also recognizes the global and open nature of the Internet as a driving force in accelerating progress towards development in its various forms.
yaradıcı və həlledici rolunu artıq orada tanınıbdır həmin qətnamə.
And calls upon all states
Və həmin bütün dövlətlərə çağırış olunmaq ki, onlar
access to internet and international cooperation aimed at the development of media and information and communication facilities in all countries.
Daha da təşviqi nöqteyi nəzərindən çox vacib əhəmiyyət kəsb edir.
We know that all countries agreed with these wordings
hamı artıq bu
and with these words.
qeyd olunan sözlərlə hamı razıdır.
In ideal world,
İdeal bir
all
dünyada
countries
bütün ölkələr
also comply with everything that is written here. So
qətnamədə qeyd olunanlara əməl etməlidirlər.
these words should not be just words or empty words on paper.
Sadəcə boş sözlər kimi, kağız üzərində olan sözlər kimi qeyd olunmamalıdır, nəzərdə saxlanılmamalıdır.
I'm also very much aware that we do not live
Əlbəttə ki, biz də
in ideal
bilirik ki,
world.
biz ideal dünyada yaşamırıq. Mən çox gözəl bilirəm ki, ideal dünyada yaşamırıq.
But still,
Amma yenə də
this document and resolution should be used
qətnamə
in all occasions to remind the governments
bütün deməli dövlətlərə deməli yadlarına salmaq üçün
that are not respecting these rights
əgər insan hüquqlarına hörmət olunmursa, onları bu
about the importance of these
xatırlatmalıdır ki,
freedoms online and protection of human rights on the internet.
İnsan hüquqlarının qorunması və azadlıqların qorunması çox vacib əhəmiyyət daşıyır. Qətnamə dövlətlərə bunu xatırlatmalıdır.
The multi-stakeholder approach the UN Internet Governance Forum is pursuing this inclusive approach,
digər bir yanaşması ondan ibarətdir.
including civil society and industry.
Vətəndaş cəmiyyəti məsələsində bunlar kifayət qədər əhatə olunmuşdur.
The term governance, no matter how it is interpreted by certain governments,
Bəzi dövlətlərdən fərqi yoxdur, hansı dövlət
already shows that it is not about regulation,
burada yəni
but about joint discussions on how the internet should govern in order to stay free, inclusive and whole.
Vacib əhəmiyyət kəsb edir.
We also know about attempts and ideas that are floating around about the Dubai meeting of the ITU in the World Conference. Discussions among the ITU towards the World Conference on International Telecommunications in Dubai show that there is a will of some governments to further regulate the internet.
İnterneti yenə də tənzimləməyə cəhdlər edirlər.
I also hear
Mən də həmçinin
that it is not about human rights, it is not about content, but again, it is the technical issue.
Texniki bir məsələdir.
These discussions within the ITU are worrying as they tend not to include civil society or even industry. This is also something that I'm going to discuss with the officials during the IGF, because this can affect our lives short term, but not to mention the threat that exists long term.
Uzun müddətdə də bu bizim həyatımıza öz təsirini göstərə bilər.
This is not multi-stakeholder, not bottom-up, not inclusive, and potentially also a human rights issue, or even purely technical decisions might have unintended consequences for basic human rights.
Məsələlər belə gözləri də bilmədən insan hüquqları məsələsinə, yəni ki, öz təsiri, mənfi təsirini göstərə bilər.
The internet is more than just an infrastructure for media and individual communication. The right to assembly online, for example, is something that certainly will become even more important in the coming months and years. Already my office and my colleagues from the OSCE Office for Democratic Institution and Human Rights are promoting this right online as well as offline. The internet has become an essential tool to exercise a wide variety of human rights, to educate oneself about human rights and to join others, globally and regardless of frontiers. And it is important to note that this is not a threat, but a great opportunity, and we should embrace it. This fear of changes should not limit our rights.
Bizim hüquqlarımızı məhdudlaşdırmamalıdır.
Because as I said many times, to many governments and to many freedom fighters, this is a lost battle. No matter how much the governments try to suppress and to restrict and to block, if they do not embrace this new freedoms and this new digital age, they will fail. Because no matter how much you try to restrict and to stop and to suppress, the history taught us in the time when we didn't have nothing even close to internet, not to mention broadcasting, not to mention any technical means. People always found a way. Always found a way to reach out for freedoms that were denied to them. No matter if we are talking about freedom of expression, freedom to assembly, or any other freedoms that we cherished and all the values that are very dear to all of us. I think these rights cannot be balanced. As the OSCE representative on freedom of the media, I'm often asked to be balanced.
Media azadlığı məsələn təmsilçisi kimi bizdən xahiş edirlər ki, bunlar tarazlaşdırılmalıdır.
And it is most of the time demanded that I do not look only at one part of the world when it comes to protection of media freedom commitments and freedom of speech protection. And I agree in a way that it should not be focused only at one part of the world. I point my finger at the governments that are actually not complying with the media freedom commitments that they voluntarily agreed. But if the journalist or a blogger or a social media activist is imprisoned, attacked, harassed, family threatened, dirty campaigns against the personality, certain personalities, I do not think I need to be balanced or silent. Because sometimes I'm also asked to use quiet diplomacy and not public statements in relation to point out my finger where the problem lies. If the journalist is attacked, there is nothing to be silenced about. We all need to join our forces and to have one voice in order to protect this person. Security matters and human rights, including media freedom, freedom of expression, and access to information, are interdependent, intertwined, and interrelated. We should all be thinking of new ways to connect and bring closer human rights and security in the 21st century. Because in no way, and no government can really think that we live in a secure and safe environment if we are not able to freely express ourselves and there is no restricted free flow of information offline and online. But I also do think that we cannot freely express ourselves if we do not live in a safe and a secure environment. So these two should come hand in hand. And that is why the Organization for Security and Cooperation, the organization that I'm representing here today, is a very good forum to explain and to use this opportunity of bringing these two issues together. In spite of technical innovation, it must not be forgotten that this traditional censorship also works for the internet. And it is important to note that freedom of the media on the internet must be defended also offline. as traditional forms of censorship such as harassment or imprisonment of online journalists or physical raids of editorial offices do apply for online media too. Attacking journalists or bloggers, as I said before, is a direct attack on freedom of the media. In this country, only I had to react on numerous occasions in order to raise my voice and in order to express my concern for certain people that were imprisoned and intimidated in Azerbaijan. I always welcomed open door policy by the Azerbaijani government and a constructive and frank approach we had in all our interactions. Because my office was mainly established in order to assist governments of 56 participating states when they have problems to comply with the media freedom commitments they all agreed upon. It's not only Azerbaijan, it's too many participating states arresting, intimidating, imprisoning journalists, bloggers, activists. As we speak, in too many of 56, we have this problem. As I said, in relation to the cooperation with the Azerbaijani government, I can once again stress that it's ongoing and it's quite successful. I will mention several names that I raised my voice previously, and it's wonderful to see some of these people here, and that they are all free, beginning from Enullah Fethullayev, Bakhtiyar Hacıyev, Cabbar Savalan, Emin Milli, Adnan Hacızadeh, and recently Zaur Kurbanli, that was released after 15 days. I cannot say how happy I am to know that they are free and able to continue their important work. And I use this opportunity once again to thank the government for the cooperation with my office. But this is hardly to be enough. In order to see a real success, this needs to stop. This practice is something that should not be practiced not only here, but in any other of 56 participating states in the region that I cover, but not to mention beyond, not to mention issues that my colleague Frank La Rue is covering.
Frank La Rue da digər ölkələrə məsuliyyət daşıyır, onun da əlbəttə ki, ölkələri bura aid edilməlidir.
At this moment, there are several people in prison for different issues related to free media and free expression. Again, not only here, in too many participating states. And once again, my role is to make sure, or at least to try, with the help of civil society, with the help of these wonderful, courageous people around the globe, trying to fight for freedoms. But we can only do it together. When I say together, I mean together with the governments. We need to fight for our freedoms jointly and not against each other. The UN Human Rights Council has decided to continue its considerations of the promotion, protection and enjoyment of human rights, including the right to freedom of expression on the internet and in other technologies, as well as of how the internet can be an important tool for the development and for exercising human rights. Again, it sounds wonderful.
qeyd etməliyəm ki,
and it should be used
və istifadə olunmalıdır bundan.
by all of us.
Bütün hamımız bundan istifadə etməliyik.
I will certainly join the Council in this endeavor with the activities of my office.
Və mənim deməli ofisin
defending the internet whole and free is a continuous struggle
və internetdən
that needs to be led both online and offline.
Həm online, həm də offline sərhədsiz istifadəyə imkan yaradılması uğrunda biz bunu
This must be done with regards to regulation,
həm tənzimləmə,
technical infrastructure,
texniki infrastruktur nöqteyi nəzərindən,
security,
təhlükəsizlik nöqteyi nəzərindən,
access, and
istifadə
content.
nöqteyi nəzərindən və məzmun nöqteyi nəzərindən buna nail olunmalıdır.
When it comes to internet, I would just mention one more issue.
Bir şey də qeyd etmək istərdim.
And this is not new. This is something that many of you heard many times. But this is something that I'm repeating to the governments of 56 all the time.
Hökumətinə bunu daima təkrar edirəm.
When they were elected
Bunlar deməli seçiləndə
by us, by the societies in different countries,
insanlar bu hökumətləri seçəndə
I do not think they were asked
inanmıram ki, onlardan
to use the power they were given by people
səlahiyyətlərini, insanların verdiyi səlahiyyətlərini
in order to filter our opinions and our minds.
Rəylərimizi, bizim fikirlərimizi onlar filtrdən keçirmək səlahiyyəti onlara
And this
verilmir.
is something they should keep in mind
Onlar daimi diqqətə saxlamalı.
when introducing legislation that can restrict and suppress free speech.
Məsələn, azad söz ifadəsini məhdudlaşdıran qanunvericilik təqdim edəndə onlar bunu yadda saxlamalıdır.
And that in a way should provoke certain movements in the society.
Bəzi deməli hərəkatları verim ki, cəmiyyətdə.
Because again, no matter how much you try to suppress and to restrict, it will come back to you.
Yoxdur, nə qədər siz onları məhdudlaşdırsanız belə, bu yenə də sizə qayıdacaq.
And all of this should be kept in mind when the legislations or certain filtering procedures or blocking procedures are introduced by the government. Of course, everything should be based on a rule of law. But anything related to free speech should foster free speech and not restrict it.
Azad ifadəyə hər şey qarşı həyata keçirilmə, hər bir şey bunu daha da inkişaf etdirilməlidir. Bunu deməli məhdudlaşdırılmamalı.
And in no way my office or I cannot talk on behalf of Frank, but I can state that we have the same goals when it comes to freedom of expression.
İfadə azadlığı məsələsinə gəlincə,
none of our offices is trying to introduce utopian approach to human rights issues related to freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
İnsan və söz azadlığı məsələsində.
Of course, there is a need for rule of law, but not a rule of law that will turn our societies back to dark.
Qaranlığa sürükləməməlidir.
Thank you very much.
Çox sağ olun, təşəkkür edirəm sizə.